Welcome to this episode of Transformational Leadership TV, where we inspire, equip, and challenge leaders just like you to do their part to change the world around them. I'm your host, Genesis Eakes, and today, instead of an interview, we're going to have a me and you discussion that hopefully will lead to a you and you conversation. Because as transformational leaders, we need to be continually evaluating our own growth journey so that we can have a positive impact on the world around us. Now, today, we're going to be talking about the difference between a transition and a transformation. You see, a transition is about changing seasons, but a transformation is about changing you. It's about changing me. You see, I was having this conversation recently with a leader that cued my interest because they opened up and began telling me about how they were scared to move forward into some new things that we needed to take some action on. And they were scared because they had tried some things that hadn't worked. Now, the more we had talked, the more it was obvious to me that this person was running into their own leadership lid, which requires change in them. But the issue is that I was actually focused on some externals. I was looking at some externals of the season that I was noticing as a leader, and I'm seeing this season that was shifting, and I was asking them to shift some gears to be able to take advantage of this transition, to keep up with this transition. The problem is they didn't have it to give. They were going through a personal transformation so they could be able to engage with the season. So this whole conversation kind of sparked some thinking on my part. And this is where I began to realize that there actually is a big difference between a transition and a transformation. You see, in a transition, like I said, we're going to be moving from season to season. And when I think about moving from seasons, I think of things like fall and winter, spring, summer, and there's different things that you do in different seasons. You don't want to be planting when it's harvest time, or if you're a sports person, and I love sports myself, we've been watching a lot of sports in my family these days. And, I think about quarters. And I think about, first quarter, second quarter, halftime, third, fourth quarter, those kinds of things. And the game plan that you have and that pace of play that you have when you start out in the first quarter looks a lot different when it's the fourth quarter and the game is on the line. I think you understand what I mean. So the interesting thing about seasons is that they're cyclical. It may be a season of harvesting right now, but planting and planting season is just around the corner. It might be fourth quarter for you right now, but it's going to be first quarter before you know it. It's a cycle, and it's something that kind of repeats itself over and over. So if you find yourself in the middle of transition, or you're noticing this issue of transitioning, the biggest thing to pay attention to is timing. Timing is so crucial when you're in the middle of a transition. Now, a game can be won or lost in a transition. Sales can be won or lost in a transition. It's the ability to quickly and seamlessly move from one season to the next. It's about knowing what season a relationship is in. If you are cultivating some business development things, and knowing what season that relationship is, and knowing when to transition them when it's time. Now, one of the most frustrating things for me as a consumer is if I am working with a business and I'm looking for them to help me solve a problem. I'm looking for them to provide a service for me. And they keep talking to me as if they want to win my business. And I'm like, yep, I've already got that. I don't want you. I'm already in. Now just tell me what we're going to do. Give me the game plan. What are the next steps? How do I sign up? What does that look like? And it's frustrating to me if they miss the timing. If they didn't pick up on those cues and they didn't successfully move me from one season to the next, like, yep, generate interest, cultivate some trust, but now I'm ready to buy. And if they don't capture that moment, then I'm going to go on to another company that does know how to seize that timing and take advantage of it. You see, there's an old saying that says there's a time and a season for everything under heaven. I think they even made a song out of it. But you have to know what season that you're in order to know what to do. Now, there's also a story about a king in ancient times that had had a lot of success. He'd won a lot of battles. His kingdom had really been flourishing and was doing great. But the story goes that because in ancient times there was actually a season for war, which is kind of interesting. But there was a season when kings would go out to war, and when there was this particular season when kings went out to war. But this particular king who had been successful stayed back at the palace. Now, when he stayed back at the palace, he didn't make the transition. And because he didn't make the transition to be where he was supposed to be, he started facing challenges that he was not prepared to handle. And it nearly lost him his kingdom. So in sports, if you fail to make the transition, you can miss a handoff or you can miss a pass from a teammate. Same thing happens in business. If you fail to make that transition, you can miss a sale. You can also miss a handoff or a pass from a colleague or a teammate. So if you're listening today and you find yourself thinking, you're like, you know what? I think I'm in the middle of a transition. If that's you, then what timing do you need to be paying attention to? And let me ask you this question. Are you doing the right activities to match the season that you're in? Because you can be in one season, but other people on your team can be in another. You want to make sure that your activities are matching the season that you're in. So now I'm going to take you backwards a little bit, because remember the example I gave you earlier is I was talking to this other leader and I thought that they were in the middle of a transition to a new season. But after we had talked for a little bit, I realized that he was actually going through this transformation. And kids, remember that transitions are about strategy and they're about timing that utilizes what's already inside of you to be able to be there at the right place at the right time. Transformations, on the other hand, are about changing you into something that you've never seen before. And it can be changing you. That's the you on you discussion that I want you to have with yourself later. It can also be your organization or your team. Sometimes we're in the middle of a transformation as an organization or a transformation as a team. And we've got to look at things in ways that we never have. And as I started thinking about the difference between the cyclical nature of transitions versus a transformation, I realized that transformations are more akin to a caterpillar that's going through a metamorphosis. You see, several years ago, I was in a program where I had lost about 60 pounds. So I had put on a lot of weight over the years and had gone through a lot of seasons of weight loss, only to gain it back again. I'm pretty sure I had gained and lost the same 20 or 30 pounds more times than I could count. It was cyclical, right? I'd go into a season of weight loss, and then I would go into a season of weight gain. Then when I'd come back around and go into a season of weight loss again, but I was not actually making any progress. So when I finally decided to work on breaking that cycle, I started looking for options that would help me change from the inside out. And it worked. It was fantastic. But on the other side of COVID and some other major life changes, like now being an empty nester and my body changing as I'm getting older and I'm aging, I found myself carrying some additional weight again. And for a while, I kept thinking, okay, I'm kind of changing seasons and I need a transition. I've got to go back and do what I did before because it worked. Right? It worked. So I've got to go back and do those things again so that I can get back to the weight that I wanted to be. But the problem is that every time I kept trying to go backwards and do what I had done before, I kept having this feeling inside of me, and like something was just kind of holding me back. And it was kind of that internal voice. Any of you guys ever get that internal voice talking to you? And this internal voice just kind of kept talking to me a little bit, my own self-talk, if you will. And it's saying like, this isn't a cyclical season. you're actually in need of something new. You need to look at things new and different like you've never have before. And as I started pressing into this, I started to realize that I needed to go through my own transformation or metamorphosis, because there's this whole process that a caterpillar goes through when they change into a butterfly. Now, in order for a caterpillar to transform, they have to undo everything that they've known in order to rebuild themselves into something that's never been seen before. The crazy part is, so I kind of, geeked out a little bit on this transition of caterpillars to butterflies and what does this look like? And one of the things that I realized is that caterpillars, they actually liquefy their entire body to let go of everything that served them while they were earthbound in order to build bodies that were meant for the beauty of flight. Kind of crazy, but I think that there's a lot of learning in there. I know for me in my own personal journey, I'm still trying to figure out, I've got a couple of things that I'm working on right now as far as what does it look like to be healthy and fit at this stage. And I'm trying to pull some learning from before, but I'm also open to unlearning and relearning some different things so that I can rebuild into something new for this time. So one of the things that I started looking at is like, all right, so what does this look like if we're going to completely undo everything that we know to give ourselves space and permission to reconfigure, rebuild into something that is completely new? I was looking at three things. I came up with three things that we need to be able to do in order to go through a successful transformation. The first thing is to refine our focus. The second thing is to keep our eye on the vision. And the third thing is burn the ships. Now, let me explain what I mean by all of this. So first of all, we've got to be able to refine our focus. When I mean by refine our focus, it's really limiting the options of it, which kind of seems a little bit counterintuitive, but there's some options that we just need to take off the table, like the option of whether we're going to transform, the option of whether we're going to allow ourselves to build and to let go and to do something completely new. So I heard this story recently about a man that was really athletic. He loved sports, played all different kinds of sports, did a lot of intramurals. He wasn't necessarily a professional athlete, but did a lot, was very active and performed at a high level, but not necessarily pro. And I think you get what I mean. So anyway, this gentleman happened to be doing something, was involved in a really tragic accident. And this accident actually caused him to lose an arm, which was crazy. And I'm sure you can imagine some of the devastation that he was going through. Well, as he was rehabbing and getting healed up and all of this stuff, he realized that he still loved sports. He loved the competition of it and still wanted to do sports at an active, full level. So he started looking around and thinking about, what do I want to do? What kind of sport can I still do that I can do with one arm? Well, for some reason, and I don't know the guy personally, I just heard this story. So I'm not sure all the details, but he landed on the game of handball. He decided that he wanted to play handball. And if those of you that don't know what handball is, it's kind of like racquetball, only you use a hand instead of a racket. So he decides that he wants to play handball and he starts going after it and he starts winning. He starts playing in tournaments and doing all kinds of stuff and winning tournament after tournament. And he's playing against people that have two hands, that have two arms, but he's being very successful. After winning one of these tournaments, it was a high profile tournament in his area, somebody was interviewing him and asking him the question like, oh my gosh, how are you doing this? What is it that's making the difference for you to be able to compete, and not just compete, but win against people who have two arms when you've only got one? And he just looked at them and said with just such simplicity and clarity, so the decision's already made. I don't have to worry about which hand I'm going to use. And in that split second where someone else is trying to decide, am I going to go after this ball with my right hand or my left? My decision's already made, and I exploit that split second it takes the opponent to make a decision. So if you find yourself in the middle of a transformation, I want you to be asking yourself, have that discussion with you. Where do I need to limit my options? Where do I need to refine my focus and already make those decisions ahead of time? So I'm not wasting time debating, am I going to go through this transformation? Am I going to unlearn? Am I going to relearn? It's already made, and you're able to refine your focus. So the number two thing that you need to do if you find yourself in the middle of a transformation is you need to keep the vision of flight in front of you. Now, the vision of what I'm talking about, the vision of what you want to become, the vision of what I want to become is what gives the pain of letting go. It gives it a purpose. Vision is one of those beautiful things that always gives the pain of where we're currently at a purpose, so that we're willing to go through it. It will actually propel us and draw us forward. Now, one of the things that I think about when it comes to this vision and the pain that we could be in the middle of the process is I think about rocket ships. Rocket ships are a great example because they are actually made for space flight. They're made to navigate through space, but they've got to make it through our atmosphere and the stratosphere and be able to break through into a completely different atmosphere. And in order to do that, about 3/4, if not more, of that rocket ship has to get let go. So somebody spent hours and hours, lots of blood, sweat, tears, all of this stuff that served so well while it was earthbound. But as that rocket ship skyrockets through the air, and it keeps going, as it hits these different layers of the atmosphere, different parts of it start falling off. And they've got this whole thing where it's just like, you know what, let go. It's time to go. Then the next one kicks in, let go. Then the next one kicks in. So there's just this little tiny part that's left by the time it hits outer space. So if we don't keep the vision in mind, say, no, we don't want to be earthbound. We're looking to be able to travel in space. We want to be able to travel in areas and to go to places that we've never been before. We've got to be willing to let go of the things that we have spent blood, sweat, and tears that have served us so well previously. But we're only going to do that if we keep that vision of flight in our viewfinder, in our side, keep it in front of us at all times. Now, the third thing that I realized is that we've got to be able to burn the ships. Now, when I think of burning the ships, this is something that I learned. I'm going to take you back into a history lesson. It was actually Cortez when he was a Spanish explorer, and when he was coming to the New World back in 1519. By the time they made it all the way across the ocean, which was a feat in and of itself, he had about 600 men left, and they had landed on the New World, and they'd been through a lot. They weren't quite sure what they were supposed to be doing. They had to reinvent themselves. They had to come up with all kinds of new things in a strange place that they'd never been before. And so as Cortez had the men offload all of the supplies and all of their cargo, they got everything off of their ships. All of the men were off the ships. He gave the order to burn the ships. And this order to burn the ships, it was not just to be mean. I mean, I'm sure it was this crazy moment. I can only imagine what it would have felt like to be one of his men at that time. But when you burn the ships, you recognize that there's no other option. We're moving forward one way or the other. There is no option to go backwards. And so sometimes we need to really evaluate ourselves and say, okay, what ships do I need to burn? What options am I leaving open to go backwards to something else? Remember when I kept trying to go backwards to something that had worked for me before in this weight loss component, instead of looking for what is that new thing? What do I need to be doing to reinvent and to be able to incorporate something new on the inside of me for this time, for this place? All right, so remember, transitions are about changes in seasons. They help me know the strategy and the timing of what to do. Transformation, on the other hand, is a change in me that makes me bigger on the inside than it does on the outside, so that I'm able to capitalize on transitions for the future. So here's the point where it comes to you. Are you in the middle of a transition or a transformation? What about your organization? Are you going through an organizational transition? Is it a change in seasons? Are you paying attention to fourth quarter, first quarter? What are you looking at? Or is your organization in need of or going through a transformation? So you want to make sure that you're doing the right activities at the right time. So if you're going through a transformation, what are you doing to limit your options and refine your focus? What are you doing to keep the vision in front of you so you and your team can keep that vision and be able to deal with the pain of letting go, so you can feel the purpose of what's propelling you forward? And finally, what proverbial ships do you need to burn? Now, we'd love to know how this content is serving you, so please leave your comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you can stay inspired, equipped, and challenged to change the world around you.